Today is Sunday, November 10th, 2019. Tomorrow is Veterans Day. And when you are considering Veterans Day and you are a peace advocate like we are over here on this platform, we just want to remind you, don't hate the players, hate the game. So our United States military-industrial complex is imperialist and overreaching in nature. It's exploitive. So it goes to other countries and it claims that it is protecting our borders by exploiting other countries of their natural resources, whether it's oil or uranium or other minerals that we like to use for things like iPhones and any way that we can make a profit. But not only do we exploit the natural resources of these other countries, but we also decimate their economies and their democratic processes. And then we install our own people to sort of take over the role of their democratic leaders. And that's kind of it in a nutshell. So for Veterans Day, if you celebrate Veterans Day and you are patriotic, I don't really have an issue with that, but I have an issue with people who believe that the United States military-industrial complex is anything less than a terrorist organization that causes global terror and global pain and the largest refugee crisis in global history. So we're the bullies of the planet, basically. And to me, that's not something that you want to be celebrating. But again, we live in such a terrible state of fascism now, where we've made it so that there are people who join the military because they don't really have a choice. It's the only way that they can provide economic stability for their family. And so when you're left without a choice, that's not a democracy, like I say a lot. That's fascism, and fascism is bad. So don't hate the players, hate the game, hate the system that is in place, the economic system that is in place, which exploits poor people into becoming human shields for fascism. So that's really what I have to say about that. Some people might argue, well, at one point the military was good. We actually went in and helped win World War II. We helped stop the Nazis. No, we didn't. It was Russia that did that. Russia lost millions of lives. Men, women, and children went to war to fight the Nazis. It was when the Nazis were already losing power and they were already starting to dwindle and become less and less pervasive throughout their global goal, which was to take over the globe. When it was clear that they were losing, that's when the United States stepped in and only sent a few thousand troops, like maybe 30,000 troops out there, and then we did a big propaganda thing to make it seem like we won the war, but we didn't. It was Russia. Russia won the war against the Nazis, so they didn't want, that kind of oppressive fascism entering into their borders. And then what we did is we gave privileges to over 1,600 operatives within the Nazi Party, whether they were propagandists or scientists or military personnel or statesmen. We brought them into the United States and we gave them high-ranking positions and paid them. It's called Operation paperclip. There's been a lot of research about this and a lot of books. So we are essentially a fascist country, and that's yet another reason how you can prove that. So that's what I wanted to say regarding Veterans Day, but I also wanted to talk about us. We are on the ground doing things that take away from our creative platform, which is frustrating for us as creatives. I have a story that I wrote quite a few years ago that I want to publish on my Patreon page. JP is going to be writing, or he's going to be sketching out some etchings and some sketching to go with the story. So it's actually a little parable and a little fable that I wrote years ago, and it's really good. And I'm anxious to get that published, but I'm waiting for JP to have the time to actually sketch out the drawings that will go with it, because for me, it's so good that I want to be able to include his talent and his creative artwork into the piece that I wrote. And so I don't want to publish it, halfway and unfinished. I want it to be a complete piece with, his drawings on it. So there's that. But some of the things that we've been doing is we've been working on the ground. We spent a long time cleaning out a rat-infested lot, which I think I've talked about at length in the past, so I don't need to belabor that. But we also received a knock on our door from a couple that lived down the street from us. They live like maybe 8 houses down from us. They knocked on our door and they said, we need help. We don't want money, we don't need a place to stay, but we have a daughter who has a child of her own who needs help. She's being ritualistically abused by her boyfriend, and she's addicted to drugs, and she's ready to go into rehab, but we don't even know where to begin. And because you guys are community activists, we're asking for your help. So we're doing a lot of research for them, which is taking up a lot of our bandwidth, and we don't have anything left over to give to the Patreon page, which is why I'm putting up this message. I've also been working on creating a neighborhood association. Right now, what's happening in this little area of Pittsburgh that we live in, it's becoming incredibly vulnerable to predatory markets, whether it's the quantitative easing, financial loan houses, the lending houses that engage in quantitative easing, which is a very predatory practice that ultimately caused the 2008 crash, where we all lost our pensions and our homes. So the businesses, the local businesses and the local economy is left vulnerable to these predatory lending practices. And now there is another predatory practice that the Trump administration is going on and on about how great it is. It's called opportunity zones. And what opportunity zones simply put, is they're tax breaks for the very wealthy. And so what this does is it does not infuse money into at-risk communities. What it does is it takes at-risk communities, exploits them for their poverty, and because they are at risk, and makes them even more vulnerable and more impoverished. So, there's an entire, area in the community that I live in West Pittsburgh, that doesn't even have a place for people to go get healthy food. The United States Department of Agriculture, ran tests throughout the country and discovered that the area in Pittsburgh that I live is considered a food desert, meaning that there's no accessible, healthy food for anybody that lives here. And I'll just give you an example. JP and I, we eat organic, and we don't eat meat, and we have to travel by bus a little over an hour to go have access to a food co-op that specializes in, you know, 90% organic foods and produce. And so, and then locally made juices and things like that that are healthier for you than the processed stuff that you might find at the big corporate grocery store. So that gives you an idea of the challenges that we face living in this community. Um, and I wanted to just explain that that's why we've been away from our Patreon page. We have lots of ideas. We just haven't had the time to sit down and put those ideas into practice. We have also had to go through and pull up all of our bulbs. We have lots of dahlias and canna lilies and roses and things like that that we planted last year. So because winter is coming, it takes time to go in and pull up all of those things. So we've done that. And I met with a local artist who is hopefully going to be painting a mural on the side of the building that's across the street from me. The landlord of that building wants to have a mural painted on the side of it. So I met with the artist yesterday for a few hours to talk a little bit about, what that means. And now I'm trying to set up a time for her to also meet with the landlord because they should meet. So it's little stuff like that that we're trying to take care of, little local stuff that to hopefully build up the economy. I just spent most of my time last week helping a girl transition out of an incredibly abusive situation with her employer where they ultimately fired her, which was good because it allowed her to get unemployment. And she called me very excitedly yesterday and she's like, I think I got unemployment. Can you please decipher what this means? They've never applied for unemployment before because the process of applying for unemployment or any kind of benefits that you are eligible for in this country is incredibly difficult. The questions are nonsensical and you have to know how to answer them properly in order to get to like the next phase of the application process. And so a lot of people, they start the process and then they never finish it because it gets very complicated. So I sat down with her and we went through the process together. It took a couple of hours. And then a few days later, she got some paperwork in the mail. So she brought it over and I read through the paperwork with her line by line. And sure enough, she became eligible for unemployment because I was able to help her through the application process. So we do all of this stuff for free. The helping of the girl who's suffering from abuse at the hands of her boyfriend, who's also trying to get out of her addiction crisis mode, helping the girl who needed to file for unemployment. All of this stuff we do for free. And it's really cutting into our time where we could actually create things to make money. Studies show that if you have a Patreon account and you do a lot with it every day and it becomes 100% your focus, it can become the way that you can sustain a living. But because we are also, we also live in this place of empathy and we're not just going to leave our neighbors hanging, it takes away from our creative process. It takes away from our ability to actually make money. So it's frustrating because we're living below the poverty line and we're witnessing some financial things happening in our community that could really, really affect our community in very real ways. Like, for instance, the whole opportunity zone thing. So in order to make the people aware about that, we orchestrated a neighborhood association meeting and we're having our first meet and greet this Thursday. And I've got a few people that are on board that are going to come by and learn a little bit about what an opportunity zone is and how you can work in the system that we have in order to work around these sort of predatory practices. Some of the people attending are old school East Coast types. You know, they're the ones that say, "I remember when," and you just kind of have to listen to them and be patient. They still want to live in sort of a 19th century, early 20th century model, not understanding that those days are gone. We live in a 21st century model now. So, you know, and people here are very aggressive and very gruff and very abrasive. So there's also some racism, and going to be a very good mix of people at this neighborhood meeting. And I'm concerned that some of the people who are coming, you know, might see that there's people of color there who own their own business and they might just walk out, you know. And if that's the case, that's the case. I don't know what, you know, I don't know how to, you know, I'm not here to uh, play the PC card or anything. I simply want to inform people about the economy and about what's happening. And I've asked some of the brilliant people that I follow on Twitter to please give me some feedback about, you know, some more information about opportunity zones and quantitative easing, these kind of predatory financial practices. And I haven't really gotten the kind of response that I thought I would, which makes me think that most of the people that follow me on Twitter are probably living um, in like steady economies like in San Francisco or New York, where there are no predatory practices that are right at their doorstep. I mean, they're literally right at my doorstep, where I live. So it's a little frustrating, but we're doing the best we can to try to educate ourselves so that we can bring this knowledge to the public. Um, so this is really just kind of a quick little message to explain to our YouTube followers as well as our Patreon subscribers that we do have some some work in the hopper. It's coming. It's just that some of these other things that I've just mentioned have gotten in the way. That's what happens. Life happens when you're in the middle of making plans. Um, and our dedication to our community is really important. You know, my time with the girl who needed to file for unemployment as she goes through this career transition and also works through the trauma that she's experienced as a result of working for an abusive employer. That takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of my bandwidth, especially this couple that came to our door on Friday night and said, "Help, we need help." You know, because there's no place else for them to go. There's no women's center that offers these kinds of things. There's no like packet that you can pick up somewhere where it talks about where to go for rehab or where to go for housing if you're in an abusive situation. There's nothing like that here for the people. They certainly don't have a beautiful women's center like they have in San Francisco, where it's so gorgeous that even tourists stop and take pictures of it because of the beautiful murals on the outside of it. There's nothing like that here. So, you know, I feel like it's up to us to take care of our neighbors. And we said to ourselves, instead of trying to reach out throughout the entire community, we're just basically helping people like who are literally like right next door to us. You know, there was another girl that's like across the street from us who was trying to figure out a way to regain custody of her child because her narcissistic ex boyfriend, who's the child's father, literally came in the middle of the night and took him away. And because he's in a different county and Allegheny County is so corrupt, they wouldn't let her get him back, and it was really like alarming. And so I set to task, you know, I went to work on trying to help her. I wrote letters of reference. I got the neighbors to galvanize to help her. I got her landlord to help her, and she got her child back. So all of these things are literally right at our doorstep. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to help. We're here, but not just help and rescue people, but also inform people about what's going on. To me, having an informed public is the most empowering way that you can navigate this very corrupt system. I'm not here to tell people what to do. What I'm here to do is say, this is what's happening, and here are the options that you have in order to work around what's happening to us, because there are things being done to us financially and economically at the hands of the state that are really bad and really oppressive. It's fascism. So that's what we've been doing, and I've been on here for 20 minutes now, so I am going to end it, and then hopefully very soon we'll have another video to produce, and we might have a story that we will have published, and you can read it and see some of the artwork with it as well. Have a good rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.